So when I am carving my printing plate out of styrofoam, one thing I want to be sure that I am checking for is that my carvings are deep enough to actually physically feel with my hand. If they are too shallow, there is a good chance that you're going to get ink in each of your creases, each of your markings and etchings, and that will hide your design. You won't be able to see them when you actually go to turn your print over and print it on your paper. So it's going to be really important that you make sure as you are drawing, you are kind of feeling your etchings and your carvings. If you can see them and feel them, there's a good chance they're at a good depth. Otherwise, you may have to go over them one more time just to ensure that they're deep enough. We don't want ink to get in these cracks because then our drawings disappear. So it's going to be really important to make sure you are self-checking as you go to make sure you can feel these carvings on the plate. This is the plate you'll be working on. This is your printing plate. It is very thin and flimsy, just like an actual styrofoam plate. And you'll hear me call this your printing plate, but I don't mean a plate like you would eat off of. So when we start with our blank plate, the first thing we always want to make sure we do is carve our name into them. As you can see, I am using a regular pencil. It's not too sharp and it's also not too dull. If it's too sharp, it can poke right through the plate and we'll have a hole in our plate, and then that will just affect our design later in a negative way. And then if our pencil is too dull, there's a good chance that it's going to kind of be jagged and tear up our plate in a different kind of way. So just make sure it's a nice medium between pointy and dull, nice and sharp and dull, and then you can just get started drawing. When you are carving into your printing plate, you want to make sure you're not pressing so hard that you're poking all the way through. But if you're doing it too lightly, you will also run into those problems where they're too shallow and you won't be able to feel them and they'll fill up with ink. So you're going to have to kind of be the judge to see what feels deep enough, and if it doesn't, go back over it one more time. Remember, in cases like these, it's really good to have line variety. So you'll have a difference. Some lines may be thicker, some may be thinner. That adds something called visual interest to your artwork. If it's all the same, it's less interesting to look at. So to have that variety in your eye can kind of break it up into chunks, some larger lines, some thinner lines. This just helps to kind of nicely finish the composition and make it look like a nice finished piece. So for starters, I may do something that is kind of like a nature theme. I tend to gravitate toward things that look like plants, flowers, succulents, and things like that. So maybe I want to start out with a cactus. So I'm just drawing on this just like I would on paper. And then you can kind of be the judge if you want to make these carvings a little deeper or a little more shallow. The goal here in a printing plate is more of a carving, not your drawing showing up with lead. So you may see that in the plate, and that's okay because you're working on a white background. But what we want to really be checking for is, can we actually feel that carving? Okay. So it's good to stop every couple marks and make sure you're carving deep enough. It's okay to go back over your lines as well. And you can even kind of go off to the side of them to make them a little bit wider and give us that line variety we're looking for. So I'm just gonna go over this bottom portion of my cactus another time, make that a thicker, bolder line, not thinner. And then just kind of drag that around. So after this, I may want to make my second little pod on the cactus, or leaf, I guess they're technically called. Remember, you'll have plenty of brain food images to rely on if you feel stuck. I can also always pull up reference photos for you on the screen, but you'll have plenty of time to get your ideas on paper. So then maybe I've got another longer leaf here. I need to kind of stop what I'm doing, check to make sure I can feel my carvings. I may need to go over them one more time. So for starters, this feels pretty okay. I'm just gonna keep making a few more of these cactus leaves or petals. I'm not sure what they're called. Maybe I've got one more on a little stem out here. And then this is where I can kind of go back. Once I've got the basics down, I can go back and add that line variety, have some lines thicker, some thinner. But this is a little bit plain, and I don't want it to end like this. So what I want to do now is go back to each of the petals in my cactus and just add some detail. So cacti are known for not being soft. They're sharp, they're kind of spiky. So I'm going to start out with a circle, and then I am just drawing some lines in here. These little needles, I suppose you would call them. They almost look like little stars. And you can create your details however you'd like. Just keep in mind that line work is always the best way to go when you are doing printmaking. If you have solid blocks that don't have any interesting lines, they're going to be really plain and they're going to look just like the color that you choose for your ink. So if we don't have a whole lot going on there, there's not much to look at. So do yourself a favor and add that visual interest right off the bat so you don't run into that problem of having a really plain and not detailed print. I'm gonna make just a couple more of these. I will go back and add more to it, but for right now, I just kind of want to give you that idea. Do just a couple more. Maybe one over here as well. And I'm still checking and feeling to make sure that this feels like it's carved deep enough, because I do not want to have to go back and recarve it after I've tried inking it up. If you feel like your pencil gets stuck at a certain part in the foam, lift up your pencil and then go back to that detail from another direction. If you keep dragging in one spot and your pencil is stuck, it's not working, it will tear a hole in your plate. So go ahead and lift up your pencil and go at it from the other side. So just to add a little more variety, I'm going to go back to this middle one here and just go along the edge of it and make it a bit bolder. And this will add some nice differentiation in my lines when it's printed. For right now, it's not going to look like a whole lot of difference, but when you see it printed on paper with ink, that's where you start to see those differences in line. I'm just going to go up the edge, and then once that is finished, I will have all the line variety I'm looking for this demonstration. And next I will show you how to print with ink.